Catholic Church has a new head, Leo the 14th. And now everyone's diving into who is this guy? What do we know about him? And finding a lot of interesting information, like the following. So he was supposed to be supposedly a close colleague of Pope Francis's. He is from Chicago. He served most of his career in Peru. He spoke in Italian and in Spanish. Now, the Spanish, obviously, he had lived in South America for most of the time he was a priest. Apparently didn't say anything in English, which is a little strange, I think. Some people might have thought, well, that is your mother tongue. And there are, let me see, what else am I picking up here? Clay, we're looking at Leo XIV stuff. He was called the social pope. The previous Leo, pardon me. The previous Leo was the social pope. He wrote the Rerum Novarum, which is an encyclical that called for a living wage. So people are starting to see some things that are looking like he could be a social justice heavy pope. And that's what we seem to have on our hands right now. I saw you've probably seen it too, the Sean Davis tweet that's getting a lot of attention. Should we tell everybody about this one?
Yeah, I mean, look,
you
want to hit it with it? There's a bunch of stuff out there from his Twitter account. This is one of the first popes probably ever that's had a Twitter account. He's had an account since 2011, and a lot of it is reposts. A lot of it is not direct quotes. But here's a direct comment, and I think I mentioned this in the last hour, but directly he said, J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask for us to rank our love for others. That was a comment that he made in February of 2025, and then linked an article. And then he also, back in 2015, shared something from Cardinal Dolan at the Washington Post. Now, Cardinal Dolan has had a good relationship, if I remember, Buck, with Trump. He is New York's cardinal, right? If I'm not mistaken, New York City area cardinal. Why Donald Trump's anti-immigrant rhetoric is so problematic. That was something that Cardinal Dolan wrote on July 31st of 2015. He shared both of those. And then there are multiple other posts that he has retweeted. One of them says, I join my voice and prayers to those of my brother bishops that we might work hard to end racism in our hearts and in society. May God give comfort to the family of hashtag George Floyd in this time of anguish. Yes. He also said, saying Trump's bad hombres line fuels racism and nativism. California bishops send preemptive blast on DACA repeal. You're not going to like this one, Buck. Reposted this from Sister Helen Prejean. She's the Louisiana, if I remember correctly, right? Activist. I stand with the dreamers and all people who are working toward an immigration system that is fair, just, and moral. Hashtag defend DACA, hashtag DACA. And this is recent, as Trump and Bukele use Oval Fed's illicit deportation of a U.S. resident. A D.C. Cardinal asked, do you not see the suffering? Is your conscience not disturbed? How can you stay quiet? And then also he reposted Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut. To my colleagues, your cowardice to act cannot be whitewashed by thoughts and prayers. None of this ends until we do something to stop it. I think that was
gun violence, probably.
Yes, in Connecticut, in the shooting that happened at the elementary school.
Sandy Hook. That was a Sandy Hook tweet?
Hook. I think that's a Sandy Hook tweet.
The Pope does not know anything about guns, but that's a whole other conversation.
Okay. So those are all things that are being shared that he has shared on his social media account. On the flip side... On the flip side, Buck, Catholics, on the flip side, he has voted typically in Republican primaries throughout his voting history. But those social media account comments, again, some of them are retweets, but suggestive that he may be actually in some way a social justice warrior as priests and now popes go. So that is the background. Positive story. is that for the first time in the history of the Catholic Church, there is an American-born pope from Chicago, went to Villanova, majored in math there, and has lived all over the country. But his most recent tweet was criticism of Trump and Bukele. So my thought is, on some level,
all right, Southern Baptist man, go for it. I'm fired up over here. Go for it.
No, my thought on some level is that this could be seen by the Cardinals as some form of rebuke of Trump, and they picked an American Catholic as a result. Now, what's your analysis?
I don't think that this is that they're as focused in on that. You know, we do a political first show here. I don't think that they're picking the Pope based upon who's going to be president or who is president in one country of the hundreds of countries around the world for the next few years. So this is a problem for a lot of us who are on the right and who are Catholics. And I do not hold myself out as somebody who is particularly active or knowledgeable about the church these days, although I did grow up very much enmeshed in. I mean, we used to have church before our first soccer game or our first basketball game of the season. I don't mean on a Sunday. I mean, like, it was Monday morning, like first day of the season, time to go to church. And we used to go to church all the time when I was in school. And we had chapel every morning for 10 years at my Catholic school growing up. So, yeah, I've spent a lot of time in these places and hearing this. The challenge you have is, I mean, the George Floyd thing is pretty remarkable. I was going to say, you know, there's just a poll that came out yesterday that most people realize that the whole BLM thing just made everything worse. What I've been saying for years, what you've been saying for years, made everything worse and did not make anything better. Nothing. There was no improvement from any of that. All of that, but this is about a racial reckoning and racial justice. No, actually, it's not. It was race riots, and it was horrible and hurt the country. So anyway, the results now are in on that. I mean, the polling results, at least. The challenges you have here are, one, let's just take this issue of the rebukes of, and you've got a lot of very active Catholics. I feel like some of you could call in and do the whole call in Latin, okay? Light us up here, 800-282-2882. Some of you will have much more passionate feelings about this specific choice and are going to want to weigh in. Clay already said, if you happen to know this Pope from when he was in Chicago, that would be very interesting. Maybe one of you had him as a roommate at Villanova. Hey.
Who knows?
Maybe this Pope liked to party, do some keg stands. Yeah. You never know. But I am curious to hear from all of you about this. So we really are going to line up, rack and stack a bunch of calls on how you feel about this. But Clay, you know, for example, to call out J.D. Vance or to call out Bukele, really, that's where the worst human rights stuff is going on. This is just left-wing indoctrination. I mean, I know that now he's going to be consecrated as the Pope, and it's a big deal. But he was just a priest before this, and he was a priest that clearly held some very left-wing views. You know, not talking about the assault on Christians in the Muslim world or the suppression of Christianity and just general authoritarianism in China, and not talking about, you know, there are so many areas, so many things you could go into here. Or so many leaders you could call out. What about all these European leaders who are effectively for euthanasia, abortion, depends on which European country. Abortion usually about 6 of the months of a pregnancy. It depends on where you are. You know, all of the gender ideology stuff, the destruction of the family, the destruction of marital relationships, or rampant pornography, and I mean, just all that stuff that is supported by a lot of leaders in the Western world. And you're calling out Bukele? What about saying thanks, Bukele, for taking the murder rate from one of the worst in the world to one of the lowest in the world and saving thousands and thousands of lives and hundreds of thousands of people's lives, in the sense that they didn't just lose a family member or lose the guy that was employing them in the business or whatever because they weren't murdered by some cartel maniacs. This is what you have a tough time. I had a very tough time with the last Pope, and I just chose not to speak to my I have some very devout Catholic family members, and I cannot talk to them. I couldn't talk to them about the last Pope, really, because I had nothing good to say about a lot of the statements. Climate change stuff, it's a little bit like when a Pope talks about guns. There's just a lot of ignorance and a bit of hubris. Just saying. You know, if you don't know, you don't know. I don't care what your role is. So, like I said, I will put this out there, but I hope that this Pope is fantastic on a whole range of other issues. And maybe there's an opening here for some great things to happen. I am hopeful, as one should be, that this Pope will be great.
I would point out that when he shared two different posts about Trump and also about JD Vance, there was well knowledge that Pope Francis was not well. And if you were playing the politics game and you were an American, I bet it does not hurt to not be pro-Trump if you are trying to ascend to become Pope.
Look, so so, I had a grandparent who was very Catholic, as in went to church not just every Sunday, but like random times during the week for her whole life, but was also really into what I would call the left wing. There's really there's a Catholic Marxist wing of the church. She even subscribed to something called the Catholic Worker, which is effectively Catholic communists, which communism is always radically, in practice, radically anti-Catholic, anti-God, and horrifically destructive, and I would even argue demonic. But unfortunately, the devil is the father of lies and often presents himself, so to speak, as something quite appealing. And I think for a lot of Catholics, we are all supposed to just give all we have and go follow Jesus, and that means we should have open borders and nobody should be wealthy. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Vatican's got a lot of fancy artwork. Like, this stuff starts to get really tough for people in the real world application. Again, there's a difference between the doctrine of the church and what the Pope says as his opinion on things. And I on the doctrine stuff, aligned. On the Pope's opinion stuff, I often find myself not aligned, and I wonder how many of you have the same feelings. But on the good side of things, he's American, so we got that going for us. Which is
he's
nice.
Voted in a lot of Republican primaries,
and he's voted Republican. Well, I give him credit for this, and that's actually a very important reminder. I don't understand how you can be a practicing believing Catholic and vote for the Democrat Party. And one of my problems would be that this Pope, for example, calls out J.D. Vance. I mean, based on the church's own doctrine, I mean, Joe Biden, people that advocate for abortion for all 9 months of a pregnancy in their public role should be excommunicated from the church. But they don't do that. Or even just, how about called out? They won't do that. And that, I think, is a huge problem for a lot of us who say, okay, so you'll call out J.D. Vance or something on I don't even know what it was, on like being open borders. Which is really also, I mean, I think that some priests don't really understand this. So just be honest with you. I studied with a lot of Jesuits who are very smart on some things and truly ignorant on others. And, they're not people that have had to pay a lot of bills, just put it that way. They effectively live in communes. I mean, they are, in essence, the Society of Jesus is the closest thing to an actual functioning communist system, at least the theoretical practice of it, that you'll find anywhere. And that's a joke that a Jesuit actually told me. So they don't understand things like, if you have an open border in this country, all of the public welfare and programs to help the poor in this country effectively go under, because you're saying that all of these people have a claim to the programs that we have that are meant to help people. And by the way, if you don't pay into those programs in the form of taxes, you go to prison because men with guns come and arrest you in the name of the state. It's not as simple as just like, we got a lot of food, we're going to feed everybody.
I'd also point out he's from Peru now. And so I look at it politically. A lot of these guys are not going to be trying to draw attention to themselves. They're going to try to stay in whatever is considered to be the mainstream. That's fine. And then ultimately the buck stops with you, no pun intended, when you become the guy at the head of the Catholic Church. So sometimes you don't have any idea how a politician is going to lead until they actually end up in a position of power, because they've been trying to kind of hide in the current, for lack of a better way to describe it. I would think if you're trying to become the first American Pope, there are probably people who lied against you because of America's power in the world. And so I see it as kind of a attempt to camouflage yourself within the flow of whatever direction the river is going in some way, looking at some of these breadcrumbs, for lack of another way to describe it, on the social media accounts. But I'm curious, do any of you know him? We'll take your calls. Switch your cell phone service to Pure Talk. Get a brand new Samsung Galaxy on them with a great qualifying plan while you're at it. Stop overpaying. Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile qualifying plans start at just $35 a month. Unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, and a mobile hotspot, all in America's most dependable 5G network. Coverage just as good as one of those other companies because Pure Talk utilizes towers and networks one of those companies would use as well. You can switch to Pure Talk for just $35 a month. Cut your cell phone bill in half. Get a brand new Samsung Galaxy for free. Dial pound 250. Say the keywords Clay and Buck. Pure Talk's U.S. customer service team can help you switch in as little as 10 minutes. Again, pound 250. Say the keywords Clay and Buck to make the switch to Pure Talk today. That's pound 250.